In the depths of Southeast Asia, where the dense jungles conceal the ruins of lost kingdoms, a battle raged that would echo through the centuries. The Khmer Empire, once the jewel of the region, sprawled across the land like a mythical giant, its temples towering into the heavens, its wealth unmatched. But beyond the jungle, to the west, a rising power, the Thai kingdoms, grew more ambitious by the day. And as empires do, they collided. The Khmer had everything: wealth, grandeur, and sacred lands where gods and kings walked side by side. But the Thai, led by fierce rulers and brilliant military tacticians, were on the move, determined to carve their own path to power. This wasn't just about land, it was about legacy, pride, and survival. And as their wars stretched on, a dark shadow fell over the ancient temples of Angkor. What happened next would change the course of history. In a single night, the unthinkable occurred. The Khmer Empire crumbled. But the fall of Angkor wasn't just a military defeat. It was a betrayal, a tragedy, and a tale of darkness that still lingers in the air of Southeast Asia. The air above Angkor was thick with the scent of rain and smoke. Beneath the grey sky, the sacred towers of Angkor Wat glowed faintly in the dying light, their carved faces watching in silence as armies gathered beyond the horizon. For centuries, the Khmer Empire had ruled over a vast realm of jungles, rivers, and stone. Its kings were believed to be gods walking among men, and its people built temples to honor the heavens themselves. But in the 14th century, the heavens turned their gaze away. To the west, a new kingdom had risen, Ayutthaya, the heart of the Thai people. Once vassals, they were now conquerors, hungry for glory, land, and vengeance. The clash between Khmer and Thai would not be a single war, but a long, bleeding wound carved into the soul of Southeast Asia. Long before the thunder of war echoed across the plains, the Khmer Empire was already beginning to fracture. The vastness of its lands became its weakness. From the Mekong to the Gulf of Thailand, provinces drifted away from the royal court, their loyalty tested by famine, corruption, and the weight of divine expectation. Temples grew taller, but the people grew poorer. The once great canals that carried life through the empire began to dry, and the priests whispered that the gods had fallen silent. Yet even in decline, Angkor was a marvel. Its markets overflowed with silk and spices, its dancers moved like water before the king, and the scent of incense rose from 1,000 shrines. Then came the sound of drums. The Thais, led by their warrior kings, moved with precision and ambition. They were not content to exist in the shadow of Angkor. Their armies, hardened by years of conflict and expansion, began pressing eastward. At first, it was small raids, skirmishes along the borders, small villages burned, temples looted. But each raid brought them closer to the Khmer heartland. The once great empire found itself surrounded by enemies and haunted by its own pride. King Jayavarman Paramesvara tried to hold the borders, but his forces were stretched thin. The Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya, led by King Rameswan and later King Boromaracha, sought to break the old Khmer spirit completely. Inside Angkor, life went on as though the city were invincible. Monks continued their chants, artisans carved the faces of gods into stone, and courtiers debated omens while soldiers bled at the borders. Traders still arrived from distant lands, bringing news of kingdoms that rose and fell beyond the horizon. Yet the tension was everywhere, in the way the guards held their spears, in the hurried whispers of merchants, in the empty fields beyond the walls, where farmers had fled the advancing war. The empire was dying, but no one dared to speak it aloud. In the villages near the frontier, the people lived in fear of fire. Thai soldiers came swiftly, taking food and captives, leaving behind ruins. Families hid their children beneath rice baskets or fled into the forest, praying to ancient spirits for protection. Each invasion stripped away another layer of the empire's pride. The Khmer soldiers fought bravely, but their armor was rusted, their weapons dull. Many had not been paid in years. The Thai, by contrast, were organized and relentless. They carried new weapons, war elephants armored in bronze, archers with longbows, and cavalry that struck like lightning across the open plains. The wars were not battles of equals. They were the final gasps of an empire trying to hold back the tide. Still, Angkor refused to fall quietly. In the year 1431, the Thais laid siege to the city. For months, the capital endured. The great walls of Angkor Thom, carved with stories of gods and heroes, stood firm. Inside, the people rationed rice, prayed, and waited for relief that would never come. Disease crept through the streets. The moats that had once reflected the beauty of heaven became stagnant pools. And as the siege dragged on, starvation began to devour the living. Soldiers sold their armor for food. Priests tore pages from sacred texts to boil for broth. The empire of 1,000 years was being consumed from within. The Thais watched and waited. They knew the fall was near. And when the gates finally opened, not from conquest but from collapse, they entered a city already dying. What they found was not resistance, but silence. The once mighty Khmer capital was abandoned, its people scattered, its temples desecrated. Some legends say the last king fled into the jungle, carrying the royal regalia and a curse upon those who took Angkor. Others whisper that he stayed behind, sealing himself inside the temple, his body turning to stone. What is certain is that after 1431, Angkor was no longer the beating heart of an empire. The Thais took what they could, treasures, knowledge, captives, and left behind an empty shell. The jungle soon began its slow reclamation. But even as Angkor fell, the story of the Khmer did not end. Survivors carried their culture eastward to what would become modern Cambodia. They built new capitals along the rivers, smaller, humbler, but filled with memory. The Thai rulers, victorious, returned home in triumph, yet even they could not escape the shadow of what they had destroyed. For in conquering Angkor, they had inherited more than land. They had inherited its ghosts. The Khmer influence seeped into Thai art, language, and architecture, binding the two peoples in ways neither could escape. The war had not just drawn borders, it had intertwined destinies. Generations later, the ruins of Angkor became the stuff of legend. Travelers spoke of faces carved in stone that wept when it rained, of corridors that echoed with the footsteps of vanished kings. For centuries, the jungle kept its secrets. The temples slept beneath vines and roots, and the memory of the war faded into myth. Yet the wounds between Cambodia and Thailand never truly healed. Even in the modern age, their border remained tense, their shared history disputed, their pride unyielding. Every conflict, every claim, echoed the ancient battles that once shook the land. In the end, the fall of Angkor was not just the story of a lost city, it was the story of humanity's endless hunger for power. It was the slow decay of greatness, the price of pride, and the reminder that even gods can bleed. The Khmer built an empire to touch eternity, but eternity had other plans. The Thai, in their triumph, carried forward the fire of ambition, but that fire would burn them in turn, as history repeated its cruel cycle across the centuries. The ghosts of Angkor still whisper in the ruins. Their voices tell of kings who believed themselves divine, of warriors who died nameless beneath the shadow of stone towers, of people who once ruled the heart of the world and then vanished without a trace. And though the jungle hides the scars, the land remembers. The rivers still follow the paths carved by ancient canals, and the wind still carries the echoes of war. In the silence of Angkor, you can still feel the pulse of the empire that was, and the beating heart of the empire that took its place. The jungle reclaimed Angkor with quiet hunger. Trees split the walls of temples once consecrated by kings, their roots curling around forgotten gods. The city that had once commanded the region's trade and power became a haunted ruin. But history does not end with silence. When one empire falls, another rises to take its place. The Thai kings of Ayutthaya stood triumphant after the fall of Angkor, but the echoes of that victory carried a curse. They had awakened a rivalry that would outlast dynasties, a tension that would ripple across centuries. The Khmer people, scattered and broken, did not forget. Across the rice fields and river deltas, they whispered stories of vengeance and pride, of the day they would reclaim their lost glory. In the decades following 1431, the region's balance of power shifted like sand. The Ayutthaya kingdom flourished, its cities bursting with life and trade, gold from China and spices from India filling its ports. The Thai kings adorned their palaces with Khmer artisans and adopted their architecture, their ceremonies, even their gods. Yet, in the shadows, the memory of conquest festered. The Khmer, who had been taken as captives or servants, carried with them the spirit of Angkor. They became the silent architects of their conqueror's grandeur. For every temple built in Ayutthaya's name, there was a trace of the Khmer hand guiding the stone. Meanwhile, the Khmer kingdom struggled to survive. The royal line re-established itself further east, near Phnom Penh, in lands safer from invasion, but poorer in power. The new kings ruled over a fractured land, constantly at odds with neighboring lords and wary of Thai ambition. The once vast Khmer Empire was now a mosaic of fading memories. Yet among the people, faith endured. They rebuilt their shrines, retilled the soil, and passed on the ancient rituals that once bound their gods to their kings. In the evenings, as drums echoed across the floodplains, elders told stories of Angkor, of the day the heavens wept and the city fell, and of how one day the gods would return. But the gods remained silent, and the Thai kings grew stronger. By the 16th century, Ayutthaya's influence stretched deep into the lands that had once been Khmer. The borderlands became places of constant fear. Villages changed hands with the seasons, taxes were paid to whichever army arrived first, and life was a fragile bargain between two powers locked in an endless dance of rivalry. The Khmer sought allies in the Vietnamese to the east, but even that alliance carried danger. Surrounded by larger kingdoms, Cambodia became a buffer state, its sovereignty tested again and again. The wars of the past had burned deep scars into the land, and those scars began to shape its destiny. For the Thai, the wars with the Khmer became part of their legend, a proof of divine favor, of a kingdom chosen to rule. Ayutthaya became a glittering capital of stone and gold, its walls filled with markets, its people confident in their dominion. Yet even within that prosperity, there was unease. The kings knew that power won by conquest could be lost in the same way. They fortified their borders, built temples to secure divine protection, and maintained armies ready for the next inevitable war. The border between Ayutthaya and Cambodia became a living wound, an invisible line soaked in blood and pride. In the 17th and 18th centuries, as the tides of colonial influence began to reach Southeast Asia, both kingdoms faced new challenges. European powers arrived with ships and muskets, trading silver for control. The Khmer, weakened and desperate, turned to diplomacy for survival. The Thai, more unified and resourceful, negotiated to maintain dominance. But even under the gaze of foreign empires, their ancient rivalry did not die. When Ayutthaya fell to the Burmese in 1767, Cambodia saw a brief chance to recover. Yet the price of survival was submission. In the following decades, Cambodian kings alternately sought protection from Siam and Vietnam, caught between the two powers like prey between predators. Each alliance was a betrayal of another. Each peace treaty carried the scent of treachery. The Khmer crown became a symbol of endurance rather than rule. Their land was rich in faith but poor in strength, their people proud but weary. The Thai rulers, now based in Bangkok, continued to assert their dominance, claiming suzerainty over Cambodia, while the French began to circle the region like vultures sensing weakness. In these centuries of shifting borders and borrowed thrones, the Khmer learned to survive by memory alone. They carried Angkor within them, in their prayers, their language, and their wounds. Even in modern times, the ghost of this rivalry has not faded. The most visible symbol of that ancient tension stands on a lonely cliff, the Temple of Preah Vihear. Built by the Khmer in the 11th century, it sits high above the plains, a sacred place where heaven seems to touch the earth. For centuries, both Cambodia and Thailand have claimed it as their own. In 1962, the International Court of Justice ruled in favor of Cambodia, but the verdict did little to quiet the dispute. Border skirmishes erupted again in the early 21st century, soldiers facing each other on the same soil where their ancestors once fought. The temple, carved in devotion to the gods, had become a fortress once more. Behind every modern soldier's uniform stands the shadow of an ancient warrior. Behind every border post lies a history of conquest and survival. The lines drawn on modern maps are merely new scars over old ones. The Khmer and Thai peoples, forever bound by geography and history, carry within them the legacy of their ancestors, pride, resilience, and the burden of remembering. For the Cambodian farmer tending his rice fields, for the Thai merchant crossing the border, the echoes of Angkor and Ayutthaya are never far away. They live in the stories passed down through families, in the festivals that honor ancient kings, and in the silent awe of visitors who stand before Angkor's crumbling gates. History has a way of repeating itself, not through armies or kings, but through the choices of those who inherit their ghosts. The Khmer Empire may have fallen, but its essence endures in the stones that refuse to crumble, in the language that still carries the rhythm of divine command, and in the people who continue to rebuild in the face of adversity. The Thai kingdom rose from that same fire, tempered by the lessons of conquest and endurance. Both peoples share a history of glory and grief, and in that shared suffering lies a fragile connection that time cannot erase. When you walk through the ruins of Angkor today, the silence is deceptive, the trees sway, and the carved faces of ancient kings stare back with a knowing calm. The stones seem to breathe, whispering to those who listen. They tell of empires that rose and fell, of battles fought in the name of pride and power, and of the unending struggle to be remembered. The wars between the Khmer and the Thai were not only fought with swords, but with stories. Each side wrote its own truth, each generation inherited its own version of the past. Yet the ruins stand as witnesses to both, the beauty and the brutality, the rise and the ruin. Every war leaves behind more than victors, and vanquished, it leaves behind questions. What does it mean to win when both sides lose what they love most? What is the worth of an empire if it ends in silence? The Khmer and Thai wars remind us that history is not a straight line but a circle. The conqueror becomes the conquered, and the fallen rise again in memory, art, and faith. The bloodlines of war flow through centuries, unseen but eternal. As the sun sets over the stones of Angkor, and the mists roll in from the jungle, one can almost hear the sound of distant drums. They echo not in the air, but in the heart, calling us to remember that every ruin was once alive, every empire once dreamed of eternity. But eternity belongs to no one. Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next history.